is that we think most of all that is important is that we come to common ground on how to do tax reform so that we can get tax reform done in 2017. What I and other House leaders who have been pushing the border adjustment, I still think it's the way to go. I think that's the right kind of tax reform plan. But if it's going to stop us getting to consensus to get tax reform done, then we don't want that to happen, meaning the border adjustment. We want consensus to get tax reform done.
And that was the big headline today, border adjustment tax out of the Republican tax plan. You can catch that interview in its entirety tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern Time on Mornings with Maria right here on Fox Business. And for a reaction now, Deroy Murdock, Fox News contributor and National Review contributing editor, Ned Ryan, American Majority CEO and former George W. Bush presidential writer, and Christopher Hahn, progressive radio host and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. Deroy, I'll start with you. I want to get back to this health care issue for just a second because this is going to be a big one. It can go all night long. They're talking about bringing cots out onto the Senate floor so these guys can stay up all night. Do we have to go through this? Isn't there a way for the Senate to come to some kind of agreement on a bill that's going to make it through?
Well, I think all of us will enjoy seeing them work hard for a change. You know, these are the people who've been on vacation, it seems, half of the year, and they'll probably be on vacation next week, perhaps. Look, if they have got to keep the cots out all weekend into next week, that's what they need to do. These people ran for 7 years on repealing and replacing Obamacare. It has to be done. People are suffering around the country with average premiums shooting up about 25%, 100% or more in Arizona. I personally had my plan, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. That turned out to be a lie. My plan was canceled not once but twice. We need to get this thing behind us. If it means the U.S. Senate has to lose some sleep to get it done, then by all means, let's do that.
Chris, you've been watching this vote-orama. I'm sure you're watching all of the goings-on the Senate. And I'm just going to give you some red meat here, my friend. Have some fun. Can the Republicans govern?
Doesn't look that way, does it, right? And after what Lindsey Graham said a little while ago, I don't know how anybody can vote for the skinny plan. He basically killed that plan. Even if you think there's going to be a conference committee, and by the way, Jerry, there hasn't been a conference committee of anything important in the Senate and the House probably for about 8 years now. So even if you think
wait, let's get to that in a minute. Let's get to that in a minute and confine your statements right now to tonight, my friend. Tonight, this is all important. I mean, we could actually get legislation through the Senate that would change health care for our lifetimes. Is that likely in your view?
I don't think it's likely in my view. And, you know, it appears to me that this is Mitch McConnell's Waterloo, and it's going to end pretty much the same way it did for Napoleon. I think that's the end of him
Chris,
tonight.
You're so harsh. Ned, to you, I'll ask you the same question I asked.
Elba was a nice island, Jerry.
What's that? You're just a passel of trouble, I'm telling you. Ned, let me get to you, though, because I want to ask you the same question. Can the Republicans govern? Is there a way forward here? Because I think that's the big question we're facing tonight. Can they come to some kind of agreement? Can they find agreement with the House? Is there a way to get this done?
You bring up a great question. I mean, Republicans have demonstrated a wild inability to govern, and as I have joked, they have this nasty habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory and then shooting themselves in one foot and then calmly shooting themselves in the other foot. But I will say this. Let's not seek perfection here. Let's get as much done as we can and possible on this bill, get it to the House. I did find it kind of ironic that Senator Graham was making all of these demands that you can't pass this, it has to go to conference, etc. Like this. At what point, Jerry, did they decide that they couldn't sit down months and months ago and say, hey, let's hash this out before we go down this path?
Right.
That's a big question.
They are looking wildly dysfunctional, but I will say this.
Years ago.
Okay. Let me get Deroy back in here because everybody is putting their foot on the pedal here. Pence today saying Trump has made it clear inaction is not an option here. We have everybody piling on telling the Senate to get down to it, but I think the chances of finding agreement, strong agreement, are very small. Is there a way forward?
Yeah, look, to use another metaphor, I don't think this skinny bill is an ocean liner. It's basically a lifeboat. To get this process forward, go to a conference committee, and then the House and Senate members can sit down and come up with something that will make them all happy. And I think that's what they need to do, move the process along and get to somewhere where the House and Senate can agree. And then I think we can get a bill that the president can sign, and then we finally can get Obamacare out of our hair.
And quickly, Chris, I know that's not in your genes, but quickly, okay, you were talking about conference before, right? And the reality is it's very difficult for them to put something forward that's really strong. Usually these conference bills are really watered down. What do you see coming out of a conference if we could get to that point?
Well, look, if they go to a conference committee, you're going to have Democrats involved with that committee. That's what a conference is. So you actually have a chance to get some real legislation where you got some input from both sides of the aisle that might even have a chance of passing. But that said, again, I think Graham doomed this skinny bill tonight, and that's the only thing that'll pass with the reconciliation rules, and they've got a real problem. Unless they're going to go nuclear and try to pass something without 60 votes that doesn't need reconciliation,
Ned, jump
which is
in,
also
please.
a possibility.
Jerry, if I could say one thing, is they're looking like inept children on a playground. Trump can do a few things as they're doing this. He can go look at the tax code. I mentioned this when I was on with you earlier. He can go reform the tax code to really address the underlying cost of rising premiums and deductibles by going in and tweaking the tax code, because our hospital systems, 2/3 of them are acting as nonprofits and making windfall profits. He can go in and do this without having to really deal with Congress and say enough is enough. You cannot act as nonprofits and make all of this revenue. He can go around as they are figuring out what the heck they're doing. Trump can make some really strong moves and really address what the problem is
All
here.
right, guys, we're gonna have to leave it there. I'm sorry. Lots of ways to square that circle. Lots to talk about. Great job, panel. More breaking news, though, from the Hill. I want to tell you about this right now.